The lake had always been my escape. My dock stretched out across the still water like a private road into peace, and every morning I made a ritual of sitting at the edge, coffee in hand, watching the mist lift as the sun rose. The property had been in my family for decades, long before any homeowners association existed on the shore. The dock was mine by deed, by history, and by law. But entitlement has a way of making people forget boundaries, and one woman in particular, the HOA president everyone called Karen, was determined to rewrite reality. She had spent months harassing me with letters claiming my dock violated community aesthetics. She insisted it was unsightly, even though it was built of solid cedar and maintained better than most of the structures in the neighborhood. She accused me of blocking shared access, despite the fact that my land stretched to the waterline. And when her letters failed to intimidate me, she escalated to threats of fines and warnings of legal consequences. That summer morning, she crossed the final line. I was on the dock, tightening a few bolts on one of the cleats, when the crunch of tires on gravel announced her arrival. She stormed toward me in her sharp blazer, clipboard in hand, radiating fury. Without hesitation, she declared that I had 24 hours to remove this illegal structure. She claimed the HOA board had voted, and if I didn't comply, I'd be evicted from the lakefront. The absurdity of her demand was matched only by her arrogance. My family's deed made it clear the dock, and the land it stood on, was mine exclusively. Her HOA jurisdiction stopped well short of my property line. Yet she spoke with the confidence of someone who believed the world bent to her will. But then, something caught my eye. Tied neatly to one side of my dock was her gleaming speedboat, rocking gently in the water. She had moored it there without permission, a practice she'd started months earlier under the excuse of temporary storage. I had tolerated it at first, hoping to avoid unnecessary conflict, but now it was clear, she was treating my property as if it belonged to her. The hypocrisy was staggering. She was threatening to evict me from my own dock while using that same dock to harbor her prized possession. In that instant, a plan formed, simple and decisive. If she wanted to play this game, I would show her how quickly control could slip away. As she continued her tirade, I walked calmly past her, down the dock, and untied the thick ropes securing her boat. She didn't notice at first, too busy scribbling on her clipboard and muttering about fines. But the moment I stepped aboard her speedboat, her tone changed. I started the engine with ease, she had left the keys dangling carelessly in the ignition. The roar of the motor echoed across the lake, silencing her mid-sentence. Her face turned pale as I steered the boat away from the dock, circling slowly out onto open water. She shouted after me, waving her clipboard wildly, but the words dissolved into the wind. It wasn't theft. It was reclamation. Her boat was sitting illegally on my dock, trespassing on my property. By moving it, I was asserting the very rights she was trying to erase. I guided the boat across the lake to a public marina, secured it to an empty slip, and notified the dockmaster that it was abandoned. Then, with paperwork in hand, I documented everything. Photos of it tied to my dock, the time-stamped relocation, and the marina's report. By the time I returned to shore, Karen was waiting with her phone pressed to her ear. She had called the police, confident that they would side with her as they often did when she weaponized authority. But this time, she had no idea how badly the truth would unravel her case. When the officers arrived, she launched into a dramatic performance, accusing me of stealing her boat and threatening her safety. She pointed to the empty slip beside my dock as evidence of my crime. But when I calmly presented the deed to my land, photographs of her boat illegally tied to my dock, and the marina's signed statement, the officer's expressions shifted. Her story collapsed under the weight of documented reality. She tried to argue that the HOA had jurisdiction over the shoreline, but the officers cut her short. They explained that property deeds overruled HOA bylaws, and that her boat had been trespassing on private property. What's more, by calling 911 and filing a false claim, she had opened herself up to charges of her own. Her confidence drained in real time. Gone was the loud, overbearing HOA president, replaced by a stammering neighbor cornered by her own arrogance. The officers issued her a stern warning and advised her to retrieve her boat from the marina before it was impounded. They made it clear she had no right to use my dock again. The humiliation was complete. Word of the incident spread quickly around the community. Neighbors who had once feared her fines and letters suddenly saw her for what she was, a hypocrite who bullied others while breaking the rules herself. The story of her boat being seized became local legend, retold at barbecues and whispered across lawns. For me, the victory wasn't just about putting her in her place. It was about reclaiming peace. The dock once again became a quiet sanctuary, free from her intrusions. I could sit at the edge, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise without the shadow of her entitlement looming over me. But there was also a deeper satisfaction. 4 years, she had used the HOA as a weapon to intimidate people into compliance. She thrived on fear, on making others feel small and powerless. That morning on the dock, she learned what it felt like to be on the other side, to have her property seized, her authority stripped, and her reputation dismantled. In the weeks that followed, her influence crumbled. The board members who had once supported her distanced themselves, embarrassed by her actions. Calls for her resignation grew louder, and eventually she stepped down as HOA president. She withdrew from community events, her once commanding presence replaced by silence. And me? I continued life as I always had, enjoying the lake, maintaining my property, and honoring the history of the land my family had cherished for generations. The dock stood strong, not just as a structure of wooden bolts, but as a symbol of boundaries defended and respect reclaimed. Every ripple on the lake reminded me of that morning, the morning when entitlement tried to evict me, and instead sailed away in defeat. Because in the end, the dock was never just a platform on the water. It was a line in the sand. And when Karen tried to cross it, she discovered that some lines can't be erased, no matter how loud the threats or how bold the clipboard. That same hour, her boat was gone, her power undone, and the lake was mine once again. Do like, subscribe for more.